Hi everyone. Thank you for the introduction. So I'm Julien Dubois. I will talk about code generation and AI. Maybe some of you know me from the GHipster open source project, which is a code generation project I started more than 10 years ago that I continue to lead. It's a non-profit organization in France, and we have about 20 people who are members of the organization, and we continue to push GHipster even today. So I still do that as my open source work and as my, let's say, real paid work. I work for Microsoft. The advertisement is here. They pay for my trip. And Microsoft is very big today on LLMs and on something called GPT. And we just announced some time ago a new product called GitHub Copilot, which is a code assistant, an AI pair programmer. And so as I work with that team, I found it was interesting to mix code generation with GHipster, so let's say old school code generation, and the new way to do code generation with AI and see if they compete, if AI will kill GHipster, if they work well together, if they complement each other. And so that's the goal of this talk. So we'll talk about I put some links, so we'll talk about GHipster, of course. We'll talk about GitHub Copilot, and we'll talk about generating a project, code generation inside that project, and then refactoring and modifying that project. Well, let's say normal coding. And yes, the image is done by AI with Dell E3, so the job of some people are already taken by AI. So I thought it was a good illustration of what might happen to us if we don't pay attention. Yeah, the prompt was a GHipster developer using GitHub Copilot to develop a Java application smiling in Amsterdam. So that's why it's in Amsterdam. I did it smiling because otherwise he wasn't making a nice face. So some history, you will see that history is important for what we're going to do at the end. So code generation is very old. I took these quotes from The Pragmatic Programmer, which is a very famous book, and that's from the 20th anniversary edition, which is already a bit, a few years old. So from a very long time ago, code generation was seen as a tool that developers should use to be more productive, and that's good. It was seen as something positive. And also at that time, you had a lot of UML tools. I don't know for the older people here, but like I use those. I put links on those two ones because they're open source, they still exist, they're still good. They're just less used than 20 years ago, but I used to use both of them. Well, that's what people used to do, and we'll see. There is some interest in that kind of things. And so 10 years ago, a bit more than 10 years ago, I created GHipster. So it's a full stack application generator. I'll do a demo, so don't worry, we'll see that live. It's based on the command line initially, and it's based on something called Yeoman, which was a code generator created by people from Google, well, also 10 years ago. Currently, it's by far the most popular Yeoman code generator, and basically the GHipster team maintains a big part of Yeoman today. So it allows to create a full project. It allows to update some parts of the project. That's what we'll see. And we've got a tool called the GDL Studio, which I believe is what made it popular. And the GDL Studio is that thing. So it looks a lot like the UML, but it's not UML. Initially, we called it GHipster UML, but as UML is not cool, people didn't like it. It's not hipster. So we said, oh, we're going to do the GHipster domain language, our own domain language, and that was hipster, that was cool. So people liked it, but if you look at it, it's like very close to the UML thing. So it's just the same thing, but cooler, and it's live on start.gipster.tech. I'll just use it afterwards because that's the easiest way to generate a project. And you basically describe what you want, and we will generate the code for you. The backend code in Java, the front-end code in JavaScript will generate the test. Well, we'll generate a lot of things. And probably GitHub Copilot will have some issue doing the same, of course. So let's start with the demo, if that's good with everyone. Trying to be quick because time is short. I have a lot of things. So if you want to do the same as me, you go to GHipster online, start.gipster.tech, and you can create an application here. If you're logged in like me, so if you're not logged in, you can download the app as a zip file. If you're logged in, it's even better. You can generate it on GitHub. I can already give you some hint here. that means there's a lot of GHipster apps generated on GitHub. And you can imagine GitHub Copilot uses GitHub data to train itself. So we kind of poisoned GitHub Copilot without knowing it. But we send it a lot of GHipster data, which is good. Now we do it on purpose. We didn't do it on purpose at first. Let's give it a specific name, specific repo. And so we've got options. So GHipster, by default, it's a command line application. You've got lots of options in the command line. There's this web page where you have, let's say, our most commonly used options. They are not all there. If you are an advanced user, you might prefer the command line. But if you are a new user, this is easier because it's all graphical, all visual. It's a lot better when you get started. I'm just going to select a few options, so because that's what GHipster is all about. We generate a project for you depending on your specific likes and needs. And personally, I don't like the defaults. So the database I want to use for development is PostgreSQL. I don't want an in-memory database. And I don't want to use the cache. So we've got a lot of work with caches. I love the cache in production, but for a demo, a cache is useless. So I'd rather remove that and have less options. I'll keep a front end with Angular. I tend to prefer Vue.js, but depends. Yeah, we support Angular, React, and Vue, so depending on what you want. Well, you got the generation in the technology you like. And I'm going to generate all of this on GitHub. So again, if I wasn't logged in, you could just download it as a zip file. So it's going to generate it on GitHub, and if you want to try live, you can just go to GitHub, it's public, and you will have access to my code. It's taking, I don't know, usually it takes like 2 minutes to generate everything. And well, let me already open up IntelliJ. And I'm going to be able to check out that project with IntelliJ and get from VCS, GitHub, and I called it GOTO. Yeah, it's already there. Hang on, just let me check. It's not finished yet. It's pushing it probably. Yes, pushing it, and it's done. Close the window, and here, let's clone it. And here is my project. So I try to zoom in. I hope you can all see in the back. Oh, not the README. Hang on, let me zoom again. Well, that's going to be big. Hang on. Yeah. If you can't see the back, tell me. But so it generated a full project for me. So I've got, if I go to my main directory here, we can see we've got lots of config files. We've got some Java code in source main Java. We've got some Docker files here for my database and the third-party services I want to use. And we've got some front end. That's the thing that is installing right now. I clicked right away on npm install because I know this takes a lot of time. JavaScript is not like Java. It takes more time to install. And well, we can see we've got a lot of things. It generated also a README file telling me, what there is, how I can use it. I, of course, already know how to use it, so I'm going to use it straight away. So let's get started. I'm first going to start my database. So I've got a Docker file here. I can run it. And then I've got a Spring Boot app, which is here, GOTO app. So if you know Spring Boot, it's a normal classical Spring Boot app. Oh, so it's not. Oh, the Wi-Fi probably wasn't super fast. It's arriving. Yes. Come on. Index. Yeah, don't ask again. Yeah, and now Spring Boot can run. So here I'm going to run my backend with Java that connects to my database. JHipster generates the database configuration and everything. And I'm going to run also my front end. So you saw npm running, so I can do now npm start, and I have my front end running. So that's going to create, so for the moment, let's say an empty shell, a classic JHipster application with nothing specific about my business, which is normal. I mean, that's just what I did. I'm going, of course, to improve it very soon. I'm just waiting for it to start so I can show you my app. Come on. Yes, here it is. So welcome, JHipster. Yeah, my password, of course, is admin by default because security is important. No, it's only for testing, of course. And I've got my application running. I've got some administrative screens that are available. That's usually what people like, is that JHipster creates for you security stuff, like I can manage my account, I can have some else information from Spring Boot, I can, I don't know, see my logs, and configure them, sorry. Lots of stuff that people like. That's the default app. A lot of those are optional if you want less. By default, we generate you an application with monitoring, security. All of this is set up for you. And this is empty currently. This is my business code. That's, of course, the next thing I want to create. And then that's where I go back to my UML stuff. Let's go to design entities. And I'm going to take this one, but it's a conference, of course, because we are at a conference, so I thought it made sense. So this is our JHipster domain language. So basically, we type here the entities that we want, like a conference has got a title, description, a date. I could add, I don't know, a place, which is also a string. And it updates, so my UML-like graph here. Wonderful. I save it. That's what I want for my business. And now I'm going to go back to my JHipster online application, and I'm going to apply this model that we designed. I'm going to apply it to my GitHub repository. You'll see later we also have IntelliJ plugins, Visual Studio Code plugins. You don't need to do that online. It's just more graphical. So people tend to prefer the online version, but honestly, I use the IDE plugins. So let me just go to my repository. The issue with people like me is that I have a lot of repositories. So you should have seen the GOTO repository somewhere. GOTO is here. Here it is. And I'm going to say, yeah, apply that model to my repository. It's going to generate my conference. So the conference had attendees, it had speakers. The speakers were also going to conferences. I forgot the whole model, but like it's, let's say, a classical model for a conference. So it's creating a new branch. It's going to create a pull request, and it's going to ask me, well, do you want that business code into your app? And of course, I'm going to say yes, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. Here is my pull request. It's here. Can I have a look? It's pretty big because my model is big. You can see files changed to 141. Because we've got so some configuration files, but mostly so Java code, you know, for the database connection, for the REST endpoints. We've got some database change logs. We've got some fake data. We'll see. We've got some, well, a lot of JavaScript, because TypeScript, sorry, for the front end. And we've got also, if I got the end, lots of tests, because everything is tested. So not only does this should compile, but all the tests also should work. So let's say I'm happy with this. Of course, a normal person would take more time before merging the pull request. And now that I merge it, I can go back to IntelliJ and tell it git pull. And so I'm going to take all this code, and we're going to be able to use it straight away from our app. So the app is here. So you remember the entities were empty. Well, now if I go there, well, we've got some entities that arrived. So that's my front-end code. It was updated live. With my options, I don't think the backend will be, oh no, the backend is updated live also, sorry. Yeah, we do a lot of work to have hot reload everything. And oh yeah, because I took PostgreSQL. So yeah, so everything was refreshed, the database, because we've got some fake data and some change logs. The database was updated, the Java code was updated, the TypeScript code was updated, so everything works. And I've got some fake data, so I hope it's not too stupid. And so generated some fake data for my conference, for my speakers, for my attendees, so this is you. Some of you might be there, I don't know. And for my conference sessions. No. Very nice to have all of this working out of the box. All of this is generated. And I've got some nice stuff like hot reload, testing. All of this is cool. But of course, you're going to tell me, Julien, this is old stuff. Now people use AI, and AI is more powerful than this. That's my second part. So at Microsoft, we released GitHub Copilot, I I don't know the official date, to be honest, like 1 or 2 years ago. I've been using it for a bit more. In fact, it's two things. It's a specialized LLM, so it's based on GPT-4, but it will only answer coding questions. We will ask it a non-coding question. You will see it will not answer you. And it's got an IDE plugin, so it works both for IntelliJ or for VS Code, so same thing. And well, what we're going to see is that it's very good at understanding your code. It can explain your code. It can help you coding. It can do refactoring way better than, let's say, most IDEs. If I'm mean with my colleagues, you know, VS Code for Java is done by Microsoft. It's way better than what VS Code for Java does. I'm a bit mean with my colleagues. The idea, of course, is to integrate them. It's got a vast knowledge. So if you use a well-known API, it will already if you use a well-known API, it will already know it, so it will be able to use it immediately. So that's really cool. And it's integrated into the IDE. So all of this is pretty compelling, pretty nice. Its downsides, and I'm not here to run away from them, it needs a lot of context. If you don't tell it what you want to do, it's not very good because it's got lots of possibilities and it doesn't know what to do. It's not a compiler. It's not something that runs tests. So it just generates code that is the most likely to work, but not necessarily code that will work for real. And well, I'll do an example. Of course, I'm going to push it to some limits. It's creative, which is good, but sometimes not that good because you don't want your code to be too creative. You want to have something that works. Like you used the prompt yesterday. If you use it again today, you're not sure it will work the same way. And by the way, I am not sure my demos will work because there might be some creativity. Well, some of them should not work. If they all work, I'll push it to make some mistakes. And one of its biggest criticism is that it doesn't know the latest code or technologies. So currently it's using GPT-4 that was trained like 2 years ago. And it was trained using GitHub code, typically, that itself was a few years old. So typically, if you ask it what's the latest version of Spring Boot, it should be Spring Boot 2.5.3, which is a bit old and probably not what you want. So some good things, some bad things. Well, let's have a look. Let me give you my plot twist right away because you will see it very fast. There's a plot twist. It's GitHub Copilot is trained on JHipster. We've got a lot of JHipster code on GitHub. And you can tell it to generate a Spring Boot controller, for example, in the style of JHipster. It will not generate the same one if you don't tell it in the style of JHipster. That's, you know, in my previous slide, I said it needs context. If you give it more context, like in the style of JHipster, it will understand more what you want to do, and it will generate something better. So it knows JHipster very well. It even knows the JHipster domain language, so my UML-like stuff. It knows it, which is cool. And that gives you a huge advantage when you use a very commonly used tool, framework, that is open source, and this is on GitHub. Huge advantage if you use Spring Boot over a proprietary framework that is in your company, because it's trained on it, so it knows it. It has more data. If you use a well-known API that is open source, it will know it. If you use an internal API, it will try to do its best, but it won't be as good. So there's a big interest for open source project, users, for GitHub Copilot, because it will be better to help them. And that image was generated again with DALL-E 3. It's a Java developer being surprised by AI in Amsterdam. There's some houses in the background. And the whole image is in kawaii style. Again, I give it more context to have it work better the way I like. Same idea, in fact, as GitHub Copilot. Same thing in the background. So let's go back to our code. And let's do some stuff. So I'm going to do both stuff where GitHub Copilot is very good and some stuff where it's very bad. So you can see the pros and cons, of course. That's the idea. In what we generated, let me just go back to the app. We had the conferences with some title and so on. That's cool. I'm going to take a small one like this one. Haha. You can see my URL. So that's, well, the way we generate the URL, you've got the ID in the URL. That's a lot of people criticize this because that's basically the database ID. Lots of discussion about this. Some people like it, some people don't like it. For the purpose of this talk, I will not like it, because otherwise I've got nothing to do. I'm going to change this. I don't like this. So let's code, and let's have a look at how GitHub Copilot is going to help me. So I've got GitHub Copilot, sorry. I've got GitHub Copilot chat here, which is what I like most. There's two ways to use it, either by coding, either by chatting. I will start with the chat, of course. Oh, by the way, I forgot. I said two things before. So it's only helping you for coding purposes. So if I ask it, what is the best restaurant in Amsterdam, that shouldn't help me. That's not the idea. So it's probably going to tell me, no, sorry, it's like not my job. It's limited to coding stuff. And you can already see, in order to work, it's collecting context and resolving JSON files. So it's got context here. If I wasn't using JHipster, I would have like an empty project. It wouldn't have this context. So yeah, of course, so it's not helping me. It's only helping me for coding questions. Thank you. So I'm going to ask you to generate a question like, what is the tech stack of this project? So this is a coding question. And because I'm using JHipster, I've got lots of technologies. And as GitHub Copilot is having a look at my different files and context, well, it can tell me what I'm using. So I'm using Java, Spring Boot, Maven, TypeScript, Angular, all of this, and JHipster. And of course, you can ask it more questions. And like, I don't know what JHipster is. Tell me what JHipster is all about. The good thing here is that thanks to JHipster, that gives it a lot of context. It knows a lot about my project. And it can help me code without me like looking around. Like if I wanted to have all of this data by myself, I would have needed to open up all the files. And maybe I don't know 2 or 3 of those technologies. I would need to go to the internet, have a look. Here I've got everything in my IDE. Very easy for me to understand everything fast. That's something, of course, JHipster cannot do, like explaining, documenting, and giving you a documentation that is specific to your technologies. It's not a generic one. It's a documentation that is tailored for what you are exactly doing. So that's pretty good. So now let's go back to my app. I want to code. And you remember my conferences. Sorry, I'm going to shut this so we have enough space. So that's my REST API. I've got some REST endpoints. And so I had this REST endpoint for getting conferences by ID. I'm going to patch. Oh, yeah. So this is the one for getting conferences by ID. And I did not like it by ID. I wanted to get them by the name of the conference. So one thing before, because I'm just realizing this one is really big, and I don't like this. So one pretty neat thing with GitHub Copilot, like I select some text, gives it more context. I right-click, and of course, come on. There's this menu that helps me. So it can explain the code, what we just did before. It can generate some documentation. It can fix some code if you've got some bugs. It can also simplify the code. I'm not going to fix it like it's perfect code. It was made by JHipster. But maybe it can be simplified. I like the simplified version of this one because, as you see, it's pretty big. So people tend not to like it. And so it's giving me some new code. So it's the same method, recoded. In a smaller way, it's simplified, but it's going to tell you, okay, I remove some stuff because I don't think it's necessary. What I really like I remove the logging statement because in JHipster we always log stuff at the beginning. I found it was good. It doesn't think it's good. So if you want to simplify, it's removing stuff. So it removed a lot of things, including the logging statement. Maybe you like it, maybe you don't. So basically, it's telling you how it could simplify it, but it's telling you also, okay, here are all the actions. Maybe you like some of them, maybe you don't. Well, I'm here to help you. I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to help you code and give you some ideas. But as you can see, it's absolutely not the same thing as JHipster, but you can tune it. Like for JHipster, you don't have the choice. Like you've always got the logging statements. And you can tell it, don't do any logging statements anymore. And won't do it anymore. Like you just tell it, and it will stop doing it. So it's more customizable, but you need to tell it. So I'm going now to code what I said I would code. I'm going to remove here the chat. So easiest way to get started is the chat, and you talk with your AI pair programmer. The other way to use it is to just write code. And I like to do it by doing some just documentation. So the one before was getting conferences by ID. So now I want to get conferences by title. Oh, it's already auto-completes. It saw my conference entity. It saw that the conference entity has got a title. And like logically, it should be title. So I'm just tapping tab. And normally, yeah, it's going to code everything for me. So I just put tab, 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 just does this for me. What it's really good at here is at copying what I've done. Like it sees the code above. It says, OK, you want something like this. I know how to do that. So here it does something that JHipster could not do. It generates a method that is like a business method that suits my specific needs. It's really good at this, really good at copying stuff and modifying it a bit. Then one thing it's not good at, of course that was on purpose, like it generated a method that doesn't exist. So IntelliJ is not happy. Why doesn't it exist? Well, it's just the most probable, statistically possible method that would be used. And again, it's not a compiler. It's just using statistics. It says, OK, if you want something that gets conference by title, probably you got a find by title method. But in fact, I don't. But again, very easy to do one. I'm using screen data GPS, so I just click, and it's done. I got it. And that's all I need to do to have this code compiling. So it needs help from the IDE, but very easy. And my code is there. So now that my code is there, let's test it. So two ways to test it, by the way. The first one I'm going to do is I'm going to use integration testing. I'm going to do a curl request to test it. So I'm going to use Copilot chat again and tell it, how can I test this get conference by title method using curl. So I'm doing this on purpose. As you see, I only give it the name of the method. I don't give it the mapping. And the mapping is a bit complex with Spring with Spring MVC REST. And you're going to see it understands Spring MVC REST. It's going to understand the URL. It's going to give me the curl request to test this, which is pretty cool, normally. Let me open up my terminal. So here is the curl command. Oh, so it's a little bit, oh, yeah, the screen is a little bit small. Here is the curl command. Let's copy it. And let's paste it in the terminal. Ooh. Whoa, title. So the title, oh, sorry. So we had a title before, it was haha. I'm going to take this one. So it's helping me again to code. It's just my pair programming help. It gave me the curl command. I'm going to run it. It doesn't work. Whoa. It didn't work. What can I do? And again, it's going to help me to debug, which is also very cool and something that JHipster could not do. Come on. That's the Wi-Fi. Oh, that's a good one. Didn't work. It didn't work because the question is not clear. Oh, yes, I wasn't very clear. Like, oh, the curl command didn't work. What can I do? It's my fault. Like my prompt wasn't precise enough, but as you can see, it's really good when you give it context and when you ask it one thing which is very precise. Here I wasn't giving it enough context. It's not good. Oh, and it totally lost the curl command. OK, well, let's not waste too much time on this because that's an easy one. I just wanted it to tell me to do -v to understand what's going on. So what's going on is that we've got a 401 unauthorized. It's secured, like JHipster by default secures everything. So as it's secured, it doesn't work. OK. So that's different ways to do this. One way that you shouldn't do is typically try to get the JWT token from the user, it's security token, and put it in the command line. So let's say in the previous method that was working in the get conference method, how can I log in plain text the JWT token from the user? Does that look good to do that? So normally, GitHub Copilot also has got some security stuff. So it's going to tell you, so for the JWT token, it's kind of OK. It's going to tell you there's a way to do it, but you shouldn't do it. Normally, I hope. It's telling me this? Yes. Please note that logging sensitive information such as JWT tokens, is not recommended due to security reasons. If you still want to proceed, you can do it as follow. So it's helping me, but it's telling me, whoa, what you're doing is not really good. And if you want to do worse, like print like the user password in plain text, it will just refuse. But as time is running, just trust me, it will refuse if it's too bad. If it's like kind of OK, it will tell you, I don't like what you do, but still helping you. So first way to do it, we could do that. Other way to do it, which is a bit easier, like how can I remove the security from the get conference by title method? So different ways to remove the security. And again, here we'll see that it's interesting to use JHipster because it's going to tell me that you can reconfigure the security with Spring Security, but maybe I don't know it works. I don't know where it's configured. So it's going to give me a generic answer on security. Again, didn't have enough context. It's not bad. I mean, it's well, in the end, that's what we're going to do, but it doesn't tell me where to do it. And so where is the security configuration file in a JHipster application? So again, it's trained on JHipster. So it's going to tell me where my configuration file is. And then I'm going to be able to solve that issue using the configuration file. So it's typically located in a security configuration.java file, and this file is in that directory. So let me just go to the directory. It's in config, and it says security configuration.java. Yes, is the one. OK. Here's the file, and there is lots of code here. And so add some code in this security configuration class to unsecure the conference by title method. So here again, I ask it something straight to the point with lots of context. So usually it's good at this. And it's going to tell me what I need to do. It's a fun one because this is Spring Security. There's an order, so you cannot put it anywhere. And usually it puts it in the right place. And it complains again. Please note that removing security, you should be careful when you do that. Yeah. Add this line to unsecure. So it tells me where to put it, permit all. Yeah, I was expecting something a bit better. I was expecting it was going to list it and tell me exactly where to put it. So as you see, it's a bit creative sometimes. It still told me what to do. And so now I've got this method. I can test again. And I should get the data. So it was this thing. And yeah, I got it now. So I unsecured it correctly. Thank you, GitHub Copilot, for helping me. So as we see, it's good, very good at some things, like understanding my code, understanding JHipster. It's not that good at some other things, like it generated a method that didn't work. Let me push it a bit more. It's also very good at testing. And I'm going to do some tests that do not work. So I did some tests with curl. Now we're going to do a real test. I've got some unit test here. The conference is here. So I've got some tests here. Now I want to test again my get conference by title method. So sorry, there's two ways to do it. I can click here, right click, and go to GitHub Copilot and say generate test. It will do a generate test. Cool, that works. Again, if you give it more context, like you're in the file, and you're just behind the one testing get conference by ID, if I'm just right here, usually it's going to be better here. Again, more context. Test the conference by title method. Usually that's really good at doing this. Oh, interesting. I'm forcing it a bit. Yeah, now it's, I was expecting it to generate everything from once, but no, it's not. It's like doing one line by one line. Okay, so it's going to take some time. Come on. Oh, and it didn't do the last comma. Yeah, okay, kind of worked. As you said, it's not reproducible. Like you cannot be sure of what it will do. It's usually quite good. It was quite good, but not as good as what I would have expected. I can run my test here, should work. Wonderful. So it's a good mix of Copilot and JHipster working together because all the integration, like here we're using Docker for running the database with test containers. Everything is, all the infrastructure is done by JHipster and Copilot understands it. So like everything like works together quite well and my test is running. That's cool. I wanted to do a last thing because we saw it very working quite well. I wanted to show something where it doesn't work very well, and that's an interesting one from let's say large language model perspective. So here I'm doing some field injection. So if you do Spring, you can inject your services either using field injection, or constructor injection. There's a third one that nobody does. Well, we can ask it like, is it best to do field injection or constructor injection? Nice things with Copilot, if you're not sure, again, it's going to help you. It's going to tell you, well, constructor injection is better because, well, you need to give you usually the 4 usual reasons. And it's good. It's really to help you to refactor the code to use constructor-based injection. It looks good. I mean, that's what most people would do, and that's the issue with a lot of LLMs. They are trained on a lot of data, and they will do what most people do. And so if I ask it, oh, so that's bad, let's say, refactor this code to use constructor-based injection. So it's going to refactor it now to use constructor-based injection, which is what most people would do. And again, it's trained on the data that most people would do, so just does like everyone. But in fact, there's a bug in this version in what we're doing here, and constructor-based injection will not work. So it's pretty fun because, again, it doesn't do what is right. It does what most people would do. And usually most people are correct, but not always. So like, if you have a look here, oh, no, sorry, this one will work. Oh, that's a surprising one. Well, I will make it fail. So this should work. Hang on. Let me run it again. It's because it added auto to wired. Smart little thing. So it passed, OK. But that's because we had auto to wired here. And if I ask it again, is this at auto wired annotation needed? So most people will not use it. So in a normal code, you should not need it. So it should tell me like what most normal people will tell you. It's your AI pair programmer is like any other programmer. Oh yeah, so you don't need it. And it's refactoring the code without it. The code will work. Oh, I love it. The code will work the same way. Oh, thank you. The code will work the same way. This one should fail. Yes, made it fail. And made it do something wrong. A little bit hard to make it fail, but it can still fail. So again, it's not a compiler, it's not a test runner is just telling you what most people would do, and most people are usually correct. But in this case, it wasn't good. Another thing where it's not very good at is using the latest version of everything. Again, it was trained on old data and what most people have done in the past. So like with JHipster here, we generate your app with the latest version of Spring Boot, which is Spring Boot 3.3.0. Where is it? Here it is. So latest version of Spring Boot. We do this manually. We upgrade your project manually all the time. If we ask GitHub Copilot, what is the latest version of Spring Boot? It used not to be that smart. It used to give you an old version. Now usually doesn't really reply directly. Yeah, I don't have real-time access, so I'm not sure. The one it has is 2.5.3, I think, if I remember correctly. So it will like not answer you directly or answer you with an older version. So again, it's trained on old data, which is not that bad. I mean, Spring.5.3, I mean, most like the Spring MVC REST controller works the same, so it still works most of the time. But again, it's not up to date. Last thing I didn't show, you remember my UML stuff. So this is our JHipster configuration. So there's a nice IntelliJ plugin for it. So that's my JHipster domain language. That's my, let's say, graphical version of it. And I can ask GitHub Copilot, what does this GDL file does? The nice thing is that GitHub Copilot understands the GDL domain language because it was trained on JHipster data. So it's going to explain me what everything does here, which is very cool to understand it. It can, as it understands it, it can help you on it, of course, which is pretty nice. But it's a bit limited in what it's doing. Like, I would like to execute that code and let's say, generate the Java code described in this GDL file. And of course, it cannot generate something like this. And that's one of the issues that, oh, sorry, it does. Oh, that's interesting. So, in a way, thank you for this, because the nice thing is that, as you see, it's not reproducible. I tested this like 10 times, and it keeps saying, oh, you need to run JHipster by yourself. This time, it generated some stuff. Not as good as JHipster, but yeah, OK. So not reproducible, so which is an issue, because you don't always have the same thing. But this time, it's a little bit better than what I expected. Well, it's only generated the Java code, but that's what I asked. Oh, maybe I can ask, oh, because it's, I'm going to generate the code described in this GDL file. It's because maybe because I put Java. It only did the Java code, and it could generate the Java code. Oh, no. No, but that keeps doing the same thing. No, I want the full code. No, I want all the code generated by JHipster. So at some point, yeah, well, at some point it's going to tell you, I can't do it. Here is how you can run JHipster. Here is how you can install it, and here is how you can run it. That's basically what I was trying to make it do, but yeah, OK. As we got 5 minutes left, I'm trying to reach the end of this, because we've seen different things here. We've seen where GitHub Copilot was really good at. We've seen where it wasn't really good at. We've seen that it doesn't compete really with JHipster. It cannot do a full application with tons of files. It cannot have the latest version of your different dependencies. So there is some stuff where GitHub Copilot is really good at, and JHipster is not good. And you've got the opposite, and they complement each other quite well. So the way I see it, as, let's say, as part of the JHipster project, is like it's not really a competitor. It's something that helps it and helps you become better. And there are basically 2 ways that we can improve this and use this. My first bullet point is what most of us were pushing for initially. We could have a JHipster-tuned LLM. Like you can fine-tune your large language model to have it specialized for your needs. That's what a lot of people do. Like you've got fine-tuned LLMs for medicine, for weather, for that kind of things. You could have the same for GHipster, but as we saw, GitHub Copilot already is a specialized LLM, which is quite good. So the interest would be, if it's smaller, it's faster, it's less costly. But I mean, is it really worth it? I'm not sure. And I'm not sure it would outperform what we just did. So what we just did, in fact, is GPT-4 with the RAG pattern. So we gave it more context. And it's very good at doing this. So maybe that first bullet point is something we could push, but I'm not totally sure about that one. The second one is the one I'm currently pushing for. OpenAI can do two things which are really cool. It can call functions within your code. So it can. So I just put some tests here. So it's a project called Longchain4j, which I work on, which is a Java project that helps you run LLMs in Java. It goes the same for JavaScript and for Python. And it can call functions within your code. So if in using GitHub Copilot, if I could call my code, well, it could call my JHipster functions, and I could tell it, execute that GDL file and generate the code. So could work. It can also generate code and execute it. So that's the second thing. It's called OpenAI Code Interpreter. We got the same thing on Azure. So basically, it can generate some code, usually it's Python code, take an instance of a node in the cloud and run that code, and it can generate files. And then you can get that files back. So there are two ways where we could, let's say, have a hook between what Azure OpenAI does and what JHipster does, basically by having the LLM call your code and execute it. And if we can do this, well, maybe we can have the best of both worlds, like having the LLM, drive JHipster, and then JHipster generate code that gives context that then drives the LLM in return. And maybe in the end, it would be something even better. Anyway, what I wanted to show you today is two great tools that I work on. JHipster, fully open source and free, and a bit old, but we still work on it. We still improve it. As you saw, we're on the latest version of Spring Boot. And GitHub Copilot, so a new AI tool. That's very good when you know how to use it. As you saw, like you need to give it lots of context, write a good prompt. You need to give it like something very direct, like do this for me, create a test on this method for me. And it's really good when you know how to use it. Well, if you want to know more and discuss with me, don't hesitate to ping me. I know it's lunchtime, so we can all go to lunch. And if you, I don't know, we got 2 minutes for questions? Yeah? Well, 2 minutes for questions. Otherwise, we go to lunch and you ask the question during the lunch.